Welcome back to True Crime and Twisted Tales. Today, we're diving into a case that gripped the nation and sparked outrage across the globe, the tragic and heart-wrenching story of Caylee Marie Anthony. Caylee Marie Anthony was a beautiful toddler, with sparkling brown eyes, a contagious smile, and a personality that lit up any room. Born on August 9, 2005, she lived with her 22-year-old single mother, Caylee Anthony, and her grandparents, George and Cindy Anthony, in Orlando, Florida. For those who knew her, Caylee's life seemed to be a typical picture of family love and happiness. She was a beloved child, surrounded by her family and adored by those who knew her. But, tragically, this innocence was soon shattered in the summer of 2008, setting in motion a tragic chain of events that would leave the world reeling. In June 2008, everything changed. Caylee vanished, and her disappearance would unravel an intricate web of lies, shocking revelations, and a media frenzy that would captivate the nation for years to come. The sequence of events that led to Caylee's death began on July 15, 2008, when Caylee's grandmother, Cindy Anthony, made a chilling 911 call to report her granddaughter missing. Her words were devastatingly blunt: "There's something wrong. I found my daughter's car today, and it smells like there's been a dead body in the damn car." The revelation that Caylee had been missing for a full 31 days was both staggering and incomprehensible, as Caylee had been a constant presence in the Anthony household. How could a child disappear without anyone noticing for an entire month? As the investigation unfolded, Caylee Anthony's story about Caylee's disappearance became more and more erratic and inconsistent. Caylee initially claimed that her daughter had been with a nanny, Zenaida Zanny Fernandez Gonzalez, who supposedly took Caylee on June 9. But the story soon crumbled under scrutiny, as it was revealed that no such nanny had ever existed. Investigators could find no trace of Zenaida, and even a search of the area where Caylee claimed to have left her daughter proved fruitless. This tale quickly fell apart, and Caylee's credibility crumbled with it. As the days turned into weeks, Caylee's behavior was met with increasing suspicion. While her daughter was missing, Caylee was spotted at nightclubs, shopping malls, and out with friends, even posting pictures of herself partying on social media. In fact, it seemed like Caylee was living a life entirely untouched by the tragedy of her missing daughter. Her actions, seemingly carefree and indifferent to the gravity of the situation, were incomprehensible to many. During this time, Caylee also got a tattoo that read Bella Vita, meaning beautiful life, further adding to the mounting sense of disbelief. Friends and acquaintances later testified that she showed no outward signs of distress during these days, a stark contrast to the anguish one would expect from a mother whose child was missing. As the search for Caylee intensified, the discrepancies in Caylee's story grew. She was questioned repeatedly by law enforcement, yet her explanations remained inconsistent and evasive. Cindy and George Anthony, desperate for answers, had confronted Caylee multiple times during the 31 days Caylee was gone, but Caylee's responses were vague and conflicting. Finally, it was Cindy's persistence that led her to track down Caylee at her boyfriend Tony Lazzaro's apartment, demanding to know where Caylee was. The confrontation between mother and daughter would ultimately lead to Cindy's anguished 911 call. The investigation turned into one of the largest and most publicized searches in U.S. history. Thousands of volunteers, including those from the nonprofit organization Texas EquiSearch, joined law enforcement officials in searching Orlando's parks, wooded areas, and neighborhoods for any sign of Caylee. Billboards featuring her radiant face were posted across Florida and beyond, imploring anyone with information to step forward. But the investigation took a shocking turn when attention shifted to Caylee's car. Cindy had mentioned that the vehicle reeked of decomposition, and investigators soon discovered that her claims were not unfounded. Cadaver dogs indicated the presence of human decomposition in the trunk. Traces of chloroform were found in the car, along with a single hair strand believed to belong to Caylee. Forensic experts also found evidence suggesting that the vehicle had been cleaned thoroughly, an unsettling detail that raised even more questions about what had transpired. By this time, investigators were focusing almost exclusively on Caylee. As the public began to view her as the prime suspect, the media frenzy around the case grew to an unbearable scale. National television outlets covered the investigation nonstop, and every detail, from Caylee's strange behavior to the evidence found in her car, was relentlessly dissected. In late August 2008, Caylee's grandparents, Cindy and George, appeared on television in emotional pleas for their granddaughter's safe return. While Cindy staunchly defended her daughter, insisting that Caylee loved Caylee and would never harm her, George's grief was evident. His anguish deepened as the search for Caylee continued with no answers, and as time went on, he began to express growing concerns about his daughter's role in the disappearance. Then, in December 2008, the case took a tragic and devastating turn. On December 11, a utility worker named Roy Kronk, who had been taking a break in a wooded area near the Anthony family home, stumbled upon something haunting. A partially concealed laundry bag caught his eye, and upon closer inspection, he discovered what appeared to be a small human skull. The authorities were immediately called, and a thorough investigation of the area ensued. Inside the bag, investigators discovered the skeletal remains of Caylee Anthony, her body in an advanced state of decomposition. Alongside the remains was a small Winnie the Pooh blanket, a piece of bedding that Caylee had been known to use. The skull bore traces of adhesive, suggesting that duct tape had been placed over Caylee's nose and mouth, leading investigators to believe the child had been suffocated. The location where Caylee's body was found raised questions. The wooded area where the remains were discovered was only about half a mile from the Anthony family's home, which seemed both close and disturbingly intimate. Why would Caylee's body be disposed of so near to the family's residence? Some speculated that this was an act of panic, while others wondered if it pointed to something much darker. The remains were carefully examined, and forensic experts found further troubling evidence. The duct tape found around the skull's mouth and nose became a key piece of evidence. Despite conflicting reports, some stating that the tape covered only the jaw and others claiming it extended across the nose and mouth, the forensic findings suggested that the child had been deliberately suffocated. The investigation continued, and investigators began focusing on the evidence that tied Caylee to the crime. Traces of chloroform and decomposition in her car and her lies about Caylee's whereabouts seemed to confirm her involvement. But the critical question of how Caylee had died remained unanswered. With no clear cause of death, the case took on even more uncertainty. After Caylee's remains were discovered, Caylee Anthony was arrested in October 2008 and charged with first-degree murder. The prosecution's case rested heavily on circumstantial evidence, including the discovery of chloroform traces, searches for suffocation methods on Caylee's computer, and the incriminating odor in her car. The prosecution alleged that Caylee had killed Caylee to escape the responsibility of motherhood and to regain the carefree lifestyle she had been living. Caylee's defense team, led by attorney Jose Baez, put forth a shocking theory that Caylee had accidentally drowned in the family swimming pool, and Caylee's father, George Anthony, had helped cover up the death. Baez further claimed that George had sexually abused Caylee, which supposedly led her to lie and cover up the death. George vehemently denied these allegations. As the trial began, the media circus surrounding the case exploded. Every move in the courtroom was broadcast live, analyzed, and dissected. Caylee's demeanor, sometimes stoic, sometimes tearful, became the subject of endless speculation by pundits, body language experts, and the public. Nancy Grace, a vocal critic of Caylee, famously dubbed her the top mom and led the charge against her in the media, while other commentators expressed varying degrees of skepticism about her innocence. After a 6-week trial and 2 days of closing arguments, the jury deliberated for just over 10 hours before delivering its verdict on July 5, 2011. The world watched with bated breath as the court officially declared Caylee Anthony not guilty of first-degree murder, not guilty of aggravated child abuse, not guilty of aggravated manslaughter of a child, guilty on 4 counts of providing false information to law enforcement. The verdict stunned the nation. Many had expected a conviction based on the circumstantial evidence, but the jury felt that the prosecution had failed to meet the high burden of proof required for a murder conviction. Caylee's reaction was emotional relief, while her defense team celebrated the acquittal. The decision sparked immediate outrage. Protests erupted, and social media platforms were flooded with backlash. Legal experts and ordinary citizens alike debated the case, questioning whether justice had been served. While the jury's decision was based on the law, it left many wondering whether the truth of Caylee's death would ever truly be known. After the trial, Caylee Anthony's life became a subject of intense scrutiny. Her release from prison in July 2011 was met with protests and threats. She attempted to rebuild her life in private, filing for bankruptcy in 2013 to cope with the massive legal debt she had accumulated. Though she largely stayed out of the public eye, Caylee gave her first interview in 2017, maintaining her innocence but acknowledging that many would never believe her. In 2022, she participated in a Peacock docuseries, Caylee Anthony, Where the Truth Lies, in which she again claimed her father orchestrated a cover-up and that Caylee's death was a tragic accident. The case remains a haunting, unresolved tragedy. The questions surrounding Caylee Anthony's death have never been fully answered, and public opinion about Casey's involvement remains overwhelmingly negative. Despite her efforts to tell her side of the story, the case remains a grim reminder of the complexities of justice, the dangers of media influence, and the enduring pain of a family torn apart by suspicion, grief, and unanswered questions. As we reflect on the story of Caylee, we are reminded of the fragility of justice and the haunting impact of unsolved mysteries. Caylee's memory lives on, but her death remains a tragedy that continues to captivate and haunt us all. If you found this story intriguing, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss another true crime and twisted tales tale. Make sure to leave a comment and share your thoughts on this case. What do you think really happened to Caylee Anthony? Until next time, stay safe and keep questioning the stories that unfold around you.